The building's back entrance is blocked by debris, but there's a small window just large enough for them to squeeze through. Junwoo pushes Yu Bin up first, helping her climb through the window as the zombies close in. As Junwoo prepares to follow, he takes one last look at the apartment. The food, the supplies, everything they might have used to survive, it's all gone. But none of it matters anymore. All that matters is getting out alive. With the zombies mere feet away, Junwoo scrambles through the window, dropping down into the alley behind the building. He lands hard, the impact jarring his already battered body, but he forces himself to stand. Yu Bin, still shaky but determined, helps him to his feet. "We need to keep moving," she says, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. And so, without looking back, they run. The city around them is still filled with the moans of the undead, the streets as dangerous as ever. But together, Junwoo and Yu Bin push forward, their bond strengthened by the horrors they've survived. As they disappear into the shadows of the crumbling city, they know one thing for certain: trust is a rare and fragile thing in this new world. And betrayal, whether by the living or the dead, is always lurking just around the corner. Junwoo and Yu Bin race through the narrow alleyways, the sounds of the undead growing fainter behind them, but the danger is far from over. The streets ahead are just as perilous. They've survived by sheer will, but now, exhausted and wounded, they have to be smart if they want to keep going. "We need a place to rest," Yu Bin whispers, her voice strained. Every step she takes feels like a battle, her limbs still sluggish from the lingering effects of the drugs. Her mind races, thinking of potential hiding spots they could use to regroup. Junwoo nods in agreement, scanning the area for any sign of shelter. The city is a wasteland, with most buildings either abandoned or crawling with zombies. The sun is beginning to set, casting eerie shadows across the ruins. As they round a corner, they spot a small convenience store at the end of the block. Its windows are broken, but it looks like it might offer at least temporary refuge. Junwoo gestures toward it, and they both hurry inside, careful to avoid making too much noise. Inside the store, it's eerily quiet. Shelves are overturned, and most of the food has been scavenged long ago, but the place appears empty, for now. Junwoo checks the back, making sure there are no surprises waiting for them, while Yu Bin slumps against the counter, catching her breath. "We should barricade the door," Junwoo says, grabbing a few nearby shelves and propping them against the entrance. It won't hold for long if the zombies find them, but it should buy them some time. Once they've secured the store as best they can, they sit down together behind the counter. The adrenaline that kept them going has started to fade, and the weight of what they've been through begins to settle in. Do you think we'll ever find a way out of this?" Yu Bin asks, her voice barely more than a whisper. Junwoo doesn't answer right away. He wants to believe there's hope, but after everything they've seen, hope feels like a distant dream. "We just have to keep moving," he finally says. "There has to be something better than this out there." Yu Bin nods, though her eyes betray her uncertainty. They both know that in this world, survival is never guaranteed. But as long as they're still breathing, they have no choice but to fight. As the night deepens, Junwoo and Yu Bin do their best to stay alert, taking turns resting while the other keeps watch. Hours pass in tense silence, the only sounds coming from the distant groans of the undead outside. But then, just as dawn begins to break, there's a sound that sends a chill down their spines, a faint tapping on the door. It's too deliberate to be a zombie. Junwoo tenses, motioning for Yu Bin to stay quiet as he creeps toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. The tapping continues, followed by a low voice. "Is anyone in there? Please, I'm not infected. The voice sounds desperate, but it's hard to tell if it's a trap. They've encountered people before who claimed they weren't infected, only to attack them when they let their guard down. Junwoo exchanges a look with Yu Bin, who is clearly torn. Should we? Yu Bin begins, but before she can finish, the voice speaks again, more urgent this time. Please, I just need shelter. I have supplies, I'll trade. I swear I'm not a threat. Junwoo hesitates. They need supplies, but trusting strangers has nearly gotten them killed before. His mind flashes back to Mr. Lee's betrayal, the way the man's desperation had driven him to madness. Could this person be any different? Yu Bin's hand on his arm pulls him back to the present. We can't survive alone forever, she whispers. Maybe we should. Hear him out. With a deep breath, Junwoo decides to take the risk. Slowly, he moves the makeshift barricade aside and cracks the door open, just enough to see the person outside. A man stands there, looking haggard but alert. His clothes are dirty, and he's clutching a backpack tightly to his chest. His eyes, wide with fear and exhaustion, meet Junwoo's through the narrow gap. I'm alone, the man says quickly, sensing Junwoo's hesitation. I've been on the run for days. I swear, I'm not infected. Junwoo glances back at Yu Bin, who gives a small nod. After a moment's pause, Junwoo opens the door wider, just enough to let the man inside. The man stumbles into the store, visibly relieved. He immediately holds up his hands in a gesture of peace, making sure they see he's unarmed. Thank you. I didn't think anyone would still be alive around here. Yu Bin, still weak but recovering, watches him carefully. Who are you? How did you survive out there? My name's Minho, the man replies, setting his backpack on the ground. I've been moving from place to place, scavenging what I can. I got separated from my group a week ago. I haven't seen anyone since. Junwoo eyes him warily. And you're not infected? Minho shakes his head vigorously. No, I've managed to avoid getting bitten, but it hasn't been easy. There's a tense silence as Junwoo and Yu Bin consider their options. They've seen what desperation can do to people, but they also know that, in this world, alliances, even temporary ones, can mean the difference between life and death. After a long pause, Junwoo nods. Alright, Minho, you can stay, but we're keeping an eye on you. If you try anything, Minho raises his hands again in surrender. I understand. I just want to survive, like you. As they settle in for another long day of survival, the fragile alliance begins to form. But in this world of betrayal and danger, trust is a commodity that can be shattered in an instant. The sun dipped low behind the crumbling high-rises of Seoul, casting an ominous orange glow over the city as the apocalypse pressed down from all sides. Junwoo and Yu Bin were drenched in sweat, their breaths ragged as they ran for the roof. The narrow stairwell behind them echoed with the relentless pounding of zombie feet. Each hollow thud sent chills down their spines, a grim reminder of how close death was at their heels. Yu Bin stumbled, her weakened legs still trembling from the lingering effects of the drugs Mr. Lee had given her. She gripped the railing, pulling herself up with the last of her strength, and Junwoo was by her side in an instant, helping her as best as he could while struggling with his own fatigue. They'd survived so much already, but the thought of giving up never entered their minds. They couldn't afford that luxury. Junwoo's heart raced, not just from exhaustion, but from fear, genuine fear that this might be it. They were trapped at the top of a 20-story building, and the zombies were closing in fast. If they didn't reach the rooftop soon, there would be no way out. Just a little further, he panted, squeezing Yu Bin's hand. We can make it, The stairwell door burst open behind them with a loud crash, and a wave of the undead spilled in, their moans reverberating through the narrow space like a grotesque choir. Junwoo and Yu Bin exchanged one last desperate look before dashing up the final flight of stairs. The rooftop was vast, but it felt infinitely smaller as Junwoo slammed the door shut behind them and threw the last remaining piece of furniture he could find, a rusted metal barrel, against it. The metal clanged loudly, offering a brief, hollow resistance. They were cornered. The undead would break through in a matter of moments. The skyline of Seoul stretched out around them like a graveyard of forgotten hopes. The distant hum of helicopters teased them, but there were no guarantees. Was the military still doing rescue operations? Did anyone even know they were here? They hadn't heard from the outside world since Mr. Lee's betrayal. "I don't know if we're going to make it," Yu Bin whispered, staring at the horizon with vacant eyes. The deep shadows under her eyes and the trembling in her limbs betrayed how much this battle had cost her. Junwoo pulled out his phone. The battery was nearly dead, and the last signal they'd gotten was fleeting at best, but it was their only chance. He typed out a frantic social media post. "We're on the rooftop of the building. Trapped. Surrounded. Please, if anyone sees this, send help." With trembling hands, he hit send. The message disappeared into the ether, a digital flare shot into the vast unknown. The door buckled behind them, groaning under the weight of the horde. They could hear the zombies clawing at the metal, their grotesque snarls filling the air. There was nowhere else to go. Junwoo and Yu Bin backed away, retreating to the far edge of the roof. The wind whipped at their faces, the cold night air cutting through the sweat and grime on their skin. The zombies were already starting to break through, their rotting hands clawing through the cracks. Yu Bin's eyes darted around, searching for anything at all, that could help. There was a small maintenance shed, but its door hung loose, and it was clear there was nothing useful inside. No weapons, no escape, just the bleak reality of the rooftop and the sheer drop to the streets below. Junwoo clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his ears. The spear he'd used to kill Mr. Lee was gone, left behind in their desperate escape. Now, all they had were their bare hands and the thin hope that anyone, would see his call for help. The zombies burst through the door. They came in waves. Dozens of them, their eyes hollow, their bodies twisted and mangled from whatever remnants of humanity had been left behind. Junwoo grabbed a nearby pipe, bracing himself for what felt like the inevitable. Yu Bin stood beside him, barely able to lift her arms but determined not to go down without a fight. "If this is it," she said, her voice shaking, "I'm glad I'm not alone." Junwoo nodded, unable to speak. His throat was tight with fear, but also with something else, a fierce, burning need to survive. He wasn't going to let it end like this. As the first zombie lunged at them, Junwoo swung the pipe with all his might, the metal connecting with a sickening crunch. The creature fell, but more took its place. They were overwhelmed, cornered against the edge of the rooftop. Yu Bin managed to kick one back, but she was too weak to hold her ground. The undead closed in. Just as all seemed lost, a deafening sound ripped through the air, a roar of engines, the chop of helicopter blades slicing through the wind. Junwoo's eyes snapped up to see several military helicopters circling overhead, floodlights scanning the rooftops below. They had seen the post. "Over here," Junwoo screamed, waving his arms frantically as he swung the pipe with his other hand, barely managing to keep the zombies at bay. "We're here." The first helicopter hovered overhead, a powerful light illuminating the roof as soldiers in tactical gear descended on ropes. Gunfire erupted as they opened fire on the zombies, their bullets finding their marks with ruthless precision. Yu Bin collapsed against Junwoo, relief flooding through her. The cavalry had arrived. Within moments, the soldiers had cleared the rooftop, dispatching the undead with clinical efficiency. One of them rushed over to Junwoo and Yu Bin, his voice crackling through the speaker of his mask. "Are you two all right?" he asked, though the concern in his voice was more perfunctory than personal. "Can you move?" Junwoo nodded, though his legs were trembling, barely able to support him after the adrenaline crash. Yu Bin, too weak to stand on her own, was lifted by one of the soldiers. "We've got to get out of here," the soldier said. "This place is overrun. We're taking you to a safe zone." They were hoisted into the helicopter, the rotors deafening as it lifted off. The city below grew smaller, the streets filled with the infected, but for the first time in days, Junwoo and Yu Bin felt a sliver of hope. As the helicopter soared over the ruined city, Junwoo stared out the window. The devastation was unimaginable. Entire neighborhoods overrun, the streets filled with the wandering dead. But as they flew further, the lights of the safe zone appeared on the horizon, a beacon of humanity's last stand. Yu Bin, resting beside him, reached for his hand. He took it, squeezing gently, grateful that they had made it this far together. The nightmare wasn't over, not by a long shot, but they had survived. They had escaped the rooftop. They had escaped the jaws of death. For now, that was enough. The helicopter touched down in the safe zone, and soldiers quickly escorted them to a quarantine area. Medical personnel rushed in, checking their vitals, ensuring they weren't infected. The relief on everyone's faces was palpable. As they were led inside the fortified camp, Junwoo felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The world was still broken, still teetering on the edge of collapse, but they had found a place to breathe. A place to rest. The battle for survival was far from over, but for now, they had won. They were alive.